Like with Bigfoot, I have no evidence these decks say are actually real, but maybe if I believe hard enough, I can make them come true. Because 30th Celebration marks our first ever simultaneous worldwide release, I can't analyze Japanese results and give you a fact-based answer as to what the best new decks are going to be. So that means each and every one is a Trust Your Pilot special. I, of course, have to start with the Pokemon I said was really good upon first reveal. Honestly, I think I've been overcomplicating Sylveon EX. This is really all you need to succeed. Colorful Harmony does 50 damage times the number of different types of basic energy attached to all of your Pokemon. Terapagos accelerates 3 different types of energy onto a Tera, which Eevee EX is. And Glass Trumpet accelerates up to 2 energy to colorless Pokemon provided you have a Tera in play. Now, a sane person would simply pair this with Area Zero and Noctowl using their brain to know exactly which 2 trainers they'd need every single turn. I think by now we've established that the only time the word sane should be used to describe me is when it's after in. What I decided to go for is Prism Tower as the stadium to fill up that discard pile ahead of Glass Trumpet. Because you do need a stadium to bump Watchtower, which blocks Eevee EX's ability to evolve. And while Lillie is the main supporter, Ultra Ball, Naveen, Iris, and Morty are all present as well. Considering that the deck runs Eevee EX along with every type of energy, Flareon EX and Leafeon EX become great additions. Flareon accelerates 2 energy while also hitting for a fire weakness, though we do have Moltres as well. And Leafeon can deal big damage against decks that put a lot of energy into play like Excadrill or heal against spread decks. I did keep Sparkling Crystal as the ace spec even though Sylveon isn't a Tera, but that can easily be swapped for Unfair Stamp or Hero's Cape. This is how I see the Sylveon Terapagos deck being built. 4 turtle heads poking out is probably too many, but without Japanese players doing the testing for me, I have to put it in raw. Because when you're trying out a new deck, see if the core strategy works first, then make alterations. Clefairy allows you to one-shot Dragapult even easier, same with Gravity Mountain, and Latias is a way to retreat into Terapagos. As a quick reminder, for every 30th Celebration deck I cover, feel free to offer up suggestions in the comments, because this is the first time in history we won't have data from Japan telling us what's good. We can actually discover for ourselves how bad Ditto is. If you're a fan of playing Precious Trolley style decks that instantly lose if a single card is prized, try Sylveon with the new Pikachu EX plus Energy Search Pro. This is an all or nothing deck. Zip Zap Frenzy accelerates all basic energy from hand to your Pokemon however you want. If you aren't screwed over by prizing, you can have all 8 in play by the end of turn 1. Aside from Team Rocket's Factory to draw a couple cards after Petrol, and Mega Kangaskhan is another way to draw cards, there isn't a whole lot else to talk about. I will add that Alolan Exeggutor has the same attack effect as Pikachu, except it also deals damage. This does come at the cost of being a stage 1 and requiring 2 different types of energy, but there is an Execute that can evolve as early as turn 1 going first, so it is another option. The list is solely designed to go second, get Pikachu in the active Petrol for Energy Search Pro, and Zip Zap Frenzy all your energy into play. There's still 3 Glass Trumpets, so you're not completely out of the game if you whiff a Pikachu. But yeah, if you don't have the power of ESP, you're going to lose. And don't forget that Petrol can find Trumpet or any other trainer, so feel free to experiment with one-ofs like Lily's Pearl or Gravity Mountain. For the third and final Sylveon list I'll be showcasing, we have Spidops. Bench space will be at a premium, and I'm not quite sure Spidops is better than still be running Glass Trumpet, but I'm here to get your deck juices flowing with ideas. You know what, now that I'm talking about it, how exactly are you supposed to get 3 energy on Sylveon? Well, Energy Switch your ends plan. And you're supposed to go first to use Carmine to get the energy in the graveyard, but still, Spidops just seems like a roundabout Glass Trumpet. Regardless, here's what that would look like. What I prefer about the previous 2 builds is you know who your turn 1 attacker is. Here, there isn't one. Though I guess Terapagos isn't a bad idea. Still, win every coin flip and always choose to go first. Otherwise, you probably lose. For some changes, I would recommend going down to a 3/3 Spidops line and adding Flareon because the Badoo item lock completely shuts off your ability to use Energy Switch. Okay, I'll admit my heart wasn't really in that Spidops list. So I'll give you a bonus 4th option like when Professor Oak gave Ash Pikachu even after knowing his balls had been emptied earlier that day. Getting away from all that terrible Glass Trumpet nonsense, we have Grumpig. Evolve into the Pig, accelerate any basic energy you find in the top 4 cards of your deck. Academy at Night guarantees one, while Strange Timepiece allows you to reuse Grumpig. Again, bench space will be a problem, though you can make Baby Eevee the focus here. I also thought it'd be fun to add the new Baby Umbreon since it can one-shot both Mew EX and Latias EX if somebody was just KO'd. I forewent Koraidon EX or any fighting type attacker, but that's always something to keep in mind for Meowth and Fez. The list is similar to the others, just with 8 little piggies instead of Glass Trumpet or Crispin. Energy Recycler could be increased to 2 copies so you can keep re-accelerating, and you might want to ditch both Flareon and Umbreon. Because if everything's going right, Sylveon should be taking all of your prizes. Some other options for energy acceleration include Mega Audino, which you'll basically need Backtrack Badge for. There's also Smeargle, who's a worse Terapagos, and Blaziken, who's great and all, though the whole stage 2-ness prevents it from being useful here. On the attacking side, Wellspring Masked Ogerpon is never a bad idea, while Koraidon is your best fighting option. And don't forget that you have access to literally every evolution, though Eevee EX can only evolve into the EX versions. Whichever direction you decide to go, I believe Sylveon has the highest ceiling for any new 30th Celebration deck. Umbreon EX, meanwhile, is easily the most straightforward new deck to build. For a Darkness and a Colorless, Lunatic Claw does 100 base damage. But if their active has even a single damage counter on them, that's up to 240, which is a respectable, if not slightly disappointing number. Between Monkey Dory and Risky Ruins and even Punk Helmet, though, activating Lunatic Claw is easier than sweeping Lance with Articuno. But Monkey Dory alone is fine since you're on Team Rocket's Watchtower to shut off that stupid Patrat's ability. Add Toxtricity to the mix and you basically have a typical Tox box deck minus the really strong basic attackers and plus somebody who requires simple math. Now that we found the strategy, it's all about choosing the best Eevee. While there are some new 70 hit point ones, both of the 50 HP Eevee can either evolve right away through an ability or an attack. So despite their likelihood of getting destroyed by Dragapult, they're worth considering. Same with the Call for Family Eevee. It only benches one basic, but that could be the difference between winning and getting donked. Just keep in mind that Watchtower also blocks Busted Evolution Eevee's ability. As for some other options, call me a lunatic, but I don't think the new Umbreon is worth it. Yes, 130 damage for 1 energy is good, one-shotting Latias and Mew. I just think we need somebody who takes one-shots, which is where Brute Bonnet comes in, requiring slightly more complicated math. And that's pretty much all there is to it. The list has 3 Umbreon EX, a 3/3 Toxtricity line, 3 Monkey Dory, a couple Energy Switch, and 1 of each Eevee because I have commitment issues. Everything else is what you typically find in a Toxtricity Dark Box deck, with Petrol your way of finding Secret Box. You could always take out the Punk Helmet and maybe a Monkey Dory or even 1 energy to add Lumio City, Mega Absol, or Yveltal. Personally, my first change would be to find space for Yveltal. Because against Festival Elite, it's really your only chance as it's not weak to grass and allows for some fun Monkey Dory plays. Overall, Umbreon seems like a solid C-tier deck in a world where there's several A-tier grass decks. As hyped as I was for Mill to make a comeback like Kim Kardashian, the more I thought about Maushold, the more holes I realized it had. For any energy, Gnaw together flips a coin for each Maushold you have in play. For each heads, the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck are discarded. So for this to work properly, you basically need to get 4 Tandemaus down turn 1, hoping none are prized. Turn 2, you need to get 4 Maushold down, again hoping none are prized. Then you have to leave your success in the hopes of good old RNG, milling anywhere from 0 to 8 cards. Thankfully, Redeemable Ticket can help with the pricing issues. But notice how Tandemaus only has 40 hit points. Yeah, in most matchups, it's likely to become a dead mouse. Shaman is 100% necessary because of this, along with Battle Cage to protect your bench. Patrat is unnecessary since you aren't dealing damage, while Psyduck is definitely something to think about, especially if you face a lot of Dust Noir. Recovery also becomes super important because 4 Maushold in play is always optimal. Though, with 1 likely getting knocked out every single turn, 3 is the best you can hope for. And if you're already running 3 Sacred Ash plus Lana's Aid, why not test Win? All that said, if things go marginally well, you should be milling an average of 4 cards per turn. Decks have 60 cards in them, so you'll come up well short of getting them down to 0 quickly, since 6 times 4 is only 25. This means a little creativity is in order. Backtrack Badge versus Handheld Fan will be a masterful debate that rages on for centuries. My first list chose Backtrack plus Crushing Hammer to try and mill as quickly as possible while discarding necessary energy. Then there's the checkmate card of every mill deck, Neutralization Zone. Get rid of their stadiums with Gnaw together or by having them bump Battle Cage, then become immune to EX damage. Unfortunately, there's a lot of great single prize decks out there, so don't be afraid of the tried and true, massively annoying play of bossing somebody useless up and trapping in the active with Sudowoodo. Additionally, Xerosic is here along with the Furfrou I will make work one day. Because where they choose what to discard with Xerosic, Furfrou is random, though it only brings them down to 5. Still, if they're hoarding their best cards, Hand Trim can ruin that. And what if Neutralization Zone gets bumped early or you prize both it and Redeemable Ticket? Well, we have another immunity combo. Dedenne recovers any trainer with its attack. Acerola's Mischief protects against damage and effective attacks from EXs, creating a potential infinite loop. Just make sure they have less cards in deck before attempting this, otherwise you'll beat yourself off. And not in a fun way. In order to win with Maushold Mill, you'll have to get lucky and be smart, 2 things that stream viewers know I don't possess. But with a turn 1 Fan Rotom getting 3 mice, Badoo item locking a neutralization zone ruining their life at the end of a game, this has a lot of potential. Now, if I'm being honest, I think Black and White is the worst era of the anime. Also, Handheld Fan might be better than Backtrack Badge. This is guaranteed energy disruption, whereas the badge could allow you to go from 0 heads to 0 heads. Move their energy around after giving them a handy, giving some to a Badoo if they thought it was wise to put one down, and discard the rest with Crushing Hammer. You could also be a crazy person and run this Lickitung to coach some basics down, but with a 3 retreat cost, it's too risky. Aside from that, there's not too much that's different in this variant. Though with the Dunsparce being added, you essentially trade versatility for consistency. Just remember that you want 3 Tandemaus or Maushold in play every turn, so bench space could get tight with Shaman and Fez. Even if Maushold fails in a Dragapult world, it is the best mill deck in Standard. Though, with our only Tandemaus leaving the format in March, it's highly possible this only exists for 6 or 7 months. When Lunala was first announced, I had an oopsie in my pants, thinking this was the second coming of Cerulege EX who rotates early next year. Unfortunately, while Midnight Ray is practically identical to Abyssal Flames, Lunala requires a lot of work to get it up. Don't get me wrong, 20 base damage plus 20 more for each energy in your discard pile is great. But where Cerulege is a stage 1 who could survive a hit, Lunala is a stage 2 with just 160 hit points. So you presumably need a new one every single turn, which is achieved by running the useless new Cosmog and Cosmoem plus Rare Candy. This adds several cards to the list, which means you have to subtract somewhere else. And it's either going to be consistency or energy. Since we need all that energy to take one-hit KOs against things like Dragapult and Mega Kangaskhan, your chances of playing the game will have to go down. Where Cerulege can run things like Carmine and Explorer's Guidance, you can't risk losing your rare candies or Pokemon. Meowth can't be here either, as that's too big of a 2-prize liability. Instead, it's Lunatone plus Fez plus Prism Tower with Naveen the main discard supporter, since he can keep your most important card safe. If you look at the most successful Cerulege lists, they have between 19 and 21 energy. I went with the under here, running 12 Fighting, 6 Psychic, and 1 Legacy. The one nice thing about a single prize attacker is that games will typically go longer unless they're playing Slowking because you have no way of blocking Kyurem, so maybe add a Shaman. Legacy energy turns a 6-prize game into a 7-prize one, so that's your A-Spec. Solrock is your main attacker on turn 1 and probably turn 2, only dealing 70 damage, which can help soften some things up. The question is whether 4 Ultra Ball is necessary. More recovery might be more smarter, or running 4 Naveen could be the play. However it shakes out, start here and make some changes. Of course, if you're feeling frisky, you could always make a straight Psychic version. Mystery Garden discards any energy from hand to drop to the number of Psychic Pokemon you have in play. Telepathic benches 2 Psychic types, and Clefairy and Latias pair perfectly here, letting you hit Dragapult for weakness and freely retreat your basics. As much as I want to include some spice in the form of Deoxys or Frillish or Xerneas, I'm bound by the whole trying to make a functioning deck caveat, which is super annoying. To that end, this is the Psychic Lunala list. It has the same 19 energy, I'm just not sure what it's supposed to do early. I included 2 Wonders Patch so Clefairy can attack, but in that instance you probably want 2 Clefairy since prizing is an issue. So experiment before ultimately going back to the Lunatone Solrock build we all know will be superior. Unlike a Foot in relation to my mouth, I'm not really sure where Unknown fits. I mean, yeah, add a single copy to Dragapult or any Psychic deck and you can now take 2 prizes on a Badoo or Smoochum with its 40 damage attack. I meant in regards to my 30th Celebration deck preview videos. So to solve this problem, I used a tried and true strategy of just jamming it in. Reigniting my passion for the Pokemon trading card game that the designers seem to have lost, what about Unown with Gladion's final battle? To be honest, this isn't the craziest idea. The main issue is going to be getting your hand down to 0 cards. If you do, Mysterious Signal is dealing 120 damage to anybody, taking an extra prize with the KO. That means not even Monkey Dory is safe, nor is anybody in the Hide and Sneak deck except, Delmise. Now, by having a 0-card hand deck, a few concessions must be made. All of a sudden, Pokemon Catcher becomes your dust card, and you have to play with your balls more than a normal person should. Additionally, Academy at Night essentially has to be your stadium, putting a card from hand on top of your deck. Originally, my idea was to pair Unknown with Frostlass. This helps put things in range of Mysterious Signal, with Monkey Dory helping out even further. Then I realized Unknown with Lillie's Clefairy covers a lot of the meta while also leaving space for Shaman and Psyduck Protract to protect your bench. Remember, thanks to Lily's Pearl, Clefairy can give up as little as 1 prize while also dealing up to 220 damage. And Unknown can take multiple prizes on anything with 120 or less hit points. I decided on Maximum Belt as the ace-spec here, because in rare instances, Gladion plus Max Belt means Unknown can one-shot Meowth for 3 prizes, though Prime Catcher might be better. I acknowledge there's holes here, and Lickitung should be an accompanying flute, but I've failed the damn thing so many times I'd rather try to take the basics directly from their hand. Still, if you potentially want to win against Dragapult in 3 turns, this is it. Otherwise, try that Frostlass idea. If you're braver than me, find a place for Mandibuzz to bring down 70 hit point basics from their hand, maybe with Latian dusting them into the active. Personally, I say to just stick with the bones of good old Frostlass Munkidori Badoo, utilizing Uxie to soften things up. The only real downside here is Munkidori wants a Darkness Energy while Unown needs 2 Psychic. Well, actually there's several downsides, but that seems like the main one. Basically, all I did with this list was take a typical Frostlass Munkidori Badoo deck, removing Mega Frostlass and Crispin and Moltres and Tainlu to make room for Unown and Wondrous Patch. It all seems a little flimsy in a Dragapult world, but don't worry. I've got something special cooking up for the last list. If you really want to get crazy with Unown, believe it or not, you can deal 270 damage with Mysterious Signal, putting Iron Hand Sex to shame. It's a simple case of using Stunfisk to trap, then next turn the combo of Gladion plus Maximum Belt. Easy peasy, right? Who cares that Stunfisk requires off-type energy and Unown needs 2 Psychic? You should never let reality stand in the way of your dreams. Does this list actually make sense? Of course not. It'll make dollars because I'm going to upload a gameplay video that gets 10 million views. Anyway, what I can say with absolute certainty is that this is a valid deck of 60 cards for the Pokemon TCG in 2026. And I can give you the Trust Your Pilot guarantee that you are insured to win at least 1 game if you play it for 3 hours. Unown and Espeon Devolve share some similarities when it comes to how you build them. Except where Unown wants you to spread damage counters like their cheats to take knockouts, Espeon partakes in a little bit of espionage. In my next video, I'll talk about the merits of devolving your opponent's Pokemon in Dragapult and Slowking. For now, what about a true spread option, which is something that hasn't really existed for 2 years thanks to one of the most oppressive decks for single prizers ruling Standard. While we do have spreaders like Tainlu, Raichu, and even Vaporeon EX, those are all off-type. You want to focus almost entirely on Psychic Energy, which narrows your options. Uxie is the top choice since it can spread 2 damage counters to all of your opponent's Pokemon for a single Psychic. Azelf is still necessary to deal with big basics, while Espeon eliminates evolutions. And Counter Gain allows both of them to attack for a single Psychic. As much as I wish you to go for a risky Ruins build relying solely on Uxie, Frostlass does have to make an appearance. Freezing Shroud does hurt your Shaman and Eevee and Munkidori, but with Adrenabrain moving damage counters, you should be okay. What will really chap your cheeks are all the stadiums almost specifically designed to make spread impossible. Battle Cage prevents Uxie and Frostlass and Munkidori from hurting the bench, Jamming Tower shuts off Counter Gain, and Watchtower stops Eevee from evolving right away. Which means even though you'd almost prefer to skip them entirely, 3 stadiums are necessary in the list. As the former #1 cheat spreader on PTCGO, I know a thing or two about this archetype. While it might seem complicated, all you really need to do is Uxie 5 or 6 turns in a row, then follow it up with a Miraculous Shine, devolving their entire board. Depending on how things shake out in testing, going down to a 2-2 Frostlass line could be fine, opening up space for a couple other cards. Because Boosted Evolution Eevee can evolve into any Eeveelution, Safeguard Sylveon becomes an option, walling EXs while you build up damage with Frostlass and Munkidori. Cofagrigus is a little too destructive for my liking, forcing you to remove Frostlass, but 6 damage counters to everyone with an ability is strong. Until you remember Dragapult doesn't have one. And Mega Frostlass is always a consideration if you can find space for water energy. I did crowdsource ideas for Espeon with the community, and one was Frostmoth. It spreads 20 damage to all of their Pokemon, which can be blocked by Shaman and Teras, but their active also falls asleep, potentially giving you more turns. Additionally, Team Rocket's Golbat and Crobat EX can be used in lieu of Frostlass to deal with those who don't have an ability. Realistically though, Espeon's not too complicated. 90 is the magic number here. If you can get all of their Dragapult to 90 damage, which is asking a lot, there's your Cloaker KO. And rarely do we see evolvable stage 1s with over 100 hit points. Unfortunately, I don't think this is the return of spread because Dragapult is a bigger menace than Spider-Man. But you will win several games, frustrating people who go up 6 prizes to 1 only to watch their entire board get wiped. To prevent the comments from being filled with people asking about it, I'll briefly talk about Espeon EX. Put simply, this is a worse Lillie's Clefairy who will remain standard legal for another 18-ish months. Solar Beatdown deals 30 damage times the number of Pokemon you have in play. With a full bench, that's 180. Clefairy, meanwhile, has a damage cap of 220 if both sides of the field are full. Sure, Area 0 bumps Espeon up to 240, but in that same scenario, Clefairy can get it up to 280. I know Clefairy also requires them to have a lot of bench Pokemon, but accompanying fluid exists. Besides, for Espeon to even be viable in this day and age, you need Clefairy to hit Dragapult for weakness. So why not cut out the middle Mankey? Compared to the other Psychic-type Eeveelution EXs, Espeon's only real advantage is the 2 energy attack cost. The 2 Teras can one-shot Dragapult with Clefairy and play for 3 energy, while Sylveon can deal up to 400 damage. So I just don't think it's worth thinking about. And there you go. Now the comments can be filled with people asking for a foot reveal as Arceus intended.